live on your tablet, phone, and the KUTV app. This is 2 News Live.
Yes, it is. Thanks for joining us on 2 News Live. I'm Brian Schnee. It is Thursday, winding down the month of March here, the 28th. We're going in depth tonight, once again, the Ruby Frankie Jody Hildebrand case, because there's so much to talk about and so much to look through. I want to share it with you. As we go in depth tonight, I encourage you to weigh in on the show. Please go on that YouTube channel or that Facebook Live and type in your comments there. A lot of you, when you're going through a lot of these Frankie Hildebrand videos that we've put out, which feels like hundreds over the last few months, you have been weighing in with your comments. I'd encourage you to do that again here on 2 News Live tonight. Let's go in depth once again on Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrand. There is so much body camera video and audio recordings. Before we get to some of these more unique parts of the case involving people other than Ruby and Jody, here's what happened that day when officers knocked on Jody's door.
Open the door! Jody, I need you to step out.
I have my attorney.
That's great. Step out of the house.
No, I'm not going to step out of the
Step
house.
out of the house.
Step out of the house.
Whoa.
We're just going to see if
Whoa,
anybody
whoa.
else. Is there anybody else home?
Wait a minute, how do you come to my house?
Right there.
Look, they come into my house.
So have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there.
So then they go inside of the home. They need a warrant for the safe room, but they searched the home for children, initially believing there were 2 inside. They only found 1.
Murphy said a 12-year-old male showed up with tape around his legs Thursday asking for help, said he was afraid asking for police.
How different was this call for you that day?
It was a first. I had never been on any sort of a call like that before.
On August 30th, 2023, Maddie Ickes was an EMT in paramedic school.
There was a lot more depth to the call than kind of what I had imagined.
She responded to a 911 call for help.
The child looks very emaciated.
Maddie was one of the first to see Ruby's son, R.
To see him to appear so okay was like a punch to the face.
Fire Captain Devin Hill.
We unbuttoned his shirt to check and see for any other injuries after we'd cut the bandages off his wrists and ankles. That we realized, I mean, he was very skinny.
Both Ickes and Hill left the scene after R was taken to the hospital.
And then we got called back a couple hours later after they made it into the home and found the younger sister.
Hey, you okay? Is it just you in here?
Police found E in a closet. Sergeant Nick Tobler sat with her for more than 3 hours, but she refused to walk out. Maddie furthered the trust built by Sergeant Tobler.
Are you scared?
I think I started out by just, am I making you afraid? Do you want me to just trying to bridge that connection and really make it apparent that I wasn't a threat to her.
And the 2 EMTs walked her out.
I've also pondered whether or not I was the right person to be in there that day. A lot of this trauma that these kids have is with women.
Do you still think about her?
Absolutely, for sure.
We spoke with them on Monday. Now, before we move on to other early suspects in this case, there was a part of my conversation with Sergeant Nick Tobler of Santa Clara Ivins Police that really sticks with me since we spoke earlier this week. Sergeant Tobler is a dad. He also patrols the community. Listen.
Throughout the process, we found out that he had escaped at one point. The boy that showed up at the house, he had escaped earlier on, and it's hard to think. I work patrol. I work the streets with a few other officers, and we're out there working nights, days, and to know that this guy could have possibly been walking down my street, and I wasn't there to help him and stop this abuse from ever taking place. It's hard to not personalize that. And so, so now my routine's a little different when I go out in the neighborhood. I'm looking for different things. I'm paying attention to different things, trying to find avenues that maybe I can stop this from happening to other kids or other people. So yeah, it definitely changed my perspective on how I do police work, changed my perspective as a father.
So let's move on to a part of this case we have not talked about very much over the last week here on 2 News Live. Ruby's husband, Kevin Frankie. Now, Kevin came to the police department in Ivins that day, and officers spoke with him for nearly 30 minutes. After questioning him, they told him what they found with his two youngest children.
Are you aware of the physical condition of your children?
No. No, I've chosen to trust my wife with the children. That was part of the agreement of our separation.
Is that you allow her to physically provide for the needs of the child? You're just removed from that? I mean, you pay support. I know this is personal questions, but...
No, yes, my job is to financially provide for them.
I was trying to figure out, like, how much of a role do you play in the caretaking of specifically of those two kids?
I pay the bills.
Okay. A 12 to 13-year-old boy was knocking on doors in a neighborhood asking for food and water, that he was severely emaciated, that he had...
What does emaciated mean?
Skinny, scrawny, malnutritioned, not enough food, not enough water to sustain life. So he had...
I'm sorry, what?
He had duct tape on his extremities, on his hands, on his ankles, and those were covering rope burns that were used to tie him down. Take a second and think about what I just said. That's the condition of your son. Given that information, your son was taken to the hospital. A warrant has been applied and granted by the Department of Child and Family Services to remove both from your wife's care. So no one right now is going to have access to these two children based on their physical condition. Do you understand that?
I understand.
Would you condone that behavior?
Would I condone that behavior?
That's my job. My job is to find out your knowledge of the treatment of these
based on your
precious
description,
children.
no. But again, I don't know the details, or I don't know what's going on. But as you described that sounds horrible,
disgusting.
So what you didn't hear was the disbelief, or maybe you could hear it at least in one of the officers' voices who was in that room, who initially had a hard time believing that Kevin didn't know a thing about any of the abuse. And that went on for about 8 minutes before the clip you just heard. I spoke with the detective on this case earlier this week and asked her about Kevin's involvement.
Did you believe that there was a lot of sincerity to how he reacted that day when you were talking with him?
Yeah, so initially a father to the kids, you would believe that they have some knowledge, some extent. And in that initial interview with him, he was very supportive of Ruby, which was a little alarming based on the injuries to the kids that we believed Ruby had inflicted. So it was very alarming. But through our interview with him, he really reiterated he had no contact for over a year. And with no contact for over a year, and then the emotions he was showing to us and to when DCFS took the kids into state custody, he appeared to be heartbroken from my point of view. And especially following the second interview, it was a complete 180, and he was very forthcoming with us. But after the first interview alone, we didn't have enough to even count him as a suspect at that time.
So before we move forward, Kevin said that he spoke to Ruby about 4 times prior to August in the year of 2023. Those were all done by phone calls. He said prior to that day of the arrest and everything went down, he had spoken to her about maybe a month before, and he didn't know about this. That's what he said in that interview. He also mentioned he hadn't lived in that home for over a year. He hadn't seen any of his children in about that time frame. So they quickly ruled out Kevin as a suspect. But what about the third member of Connections Classroom? Remember, that is the business involving Ruby Frankie, Jody Hildebrandt, and Pam Botcher?
They are trying to figure out
why you picked her up,
what you know with her. Is she okay? Did she come here willingly? I'll explain.
What are you guys doing?
I've explained this already. I'm being as courteous as I can.
Okay, well, I'm going to call an attorney.
That's fine.
I don't know what's.
Yeah, I don't even know what this is all about.
Okay, so I'm going to explain to you when we get to the car. Yes, I just explained to you that you're being detained right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you to my car, okay? I need this officer to stay with your husband, and I'm going to explain everything to you when we get there, okay?
So these videos also from August 30th from American Fork, Utah, with Pam Botcher, who was detained. What's the situation here? Well, that's where 2 of Ruby Frankie's middle children were found. So a lot of people think, what did Pam know? Is she a suspect? Watch these videos right now on our YouTube channel. They have over 1 million views on them. If you haven't seen them and you're curious, you can watch them on our channel right now in the 8 Passengers playlist. Ruby's 2 middle children were found there at Botcher's home that day. Again, that was in American Fork, so note the difference in location between Ivins, Utah and American Fork. By the way, that had to be relayed to local police in Utah County, and they definitely were a little bit confused about the circumstances here nonetheless. People who have followed this case have been very speculative of Pam's involvement. When I spoke with Jessie Hildebrandt, who's Jody's niece, months ago, I asked them about Pam. Jessie told me that Pam was always around Jody's house. That was when Jessie lived in Utah County before Jody moved south. So I also asked Detective Jessica Bate about Pam Botcher as a suspect and what they found when looking into her.
We were trying to draw a connection to Pam and her involvement in this, any knowledge of the child abuse, and going through the phones, we weren't able to find anything to tie her to being in the home, to know of this kind of abuse. We knew that the kids had been down here since May, and we didn't have anything to tie that she had been down here. We didn't have anything to tie that she had been in the home, that she knew about the injuries. She primarily was around the 2 middle kids, A and J, and so initially suspect, yes, but further into investigation, that was kind of dismissed.
So they ruled out Kevin Frankie and Pam Botcher as suspects or having any knowledge of the abuse for those 2 children in Ivins, Utah that were found on August 30th. And as we worked through this case in our investigation, people began coming forward about their past experiences with Jody Hildebrandt. One of them who has firsthand experience with her is Adam Steed. You've probably heard from him here on this program and in other programs that have talked about this case. Now, Jody shared Adam's personal information and confidential discussions with church leaders and people who worked at BYU, ultimately which resulted in her license suspension years ago.
Jody Hildebrandt is a monster. I mean, she's sitting there acting like she cares and loves those kids, and in my head, I was the guy that confided with her as a therapist that I had been a victim of sexual abuse, and my biggest fear was that someone would think I was a predator. I told her that because that's what victims think when they're kids and stuff in Idaho, and everyone's. And when she got the chance, she accused me of being a predator.
With your personal experience in this, what do you hope others take away from seeing this, consuming the coverage?
Well, there's tons of victims in the 4th District Court. The court had a racket with Jody Hildebrandt and several of their judges, and they know her very well, and they've condemned a lot of fathers. There's a lot of children out there that you think your parents were sexual predators because of Jody Hildebrandt. They're not. They're not. And you got your families need to heal, and you need to come to the truth.
That was when we spoke with Adam after sentencing in February. So if we were hearing from people who had these experiences with Jody at KUTV2 News, what did police hear that were investigating this case? I asked Detective Bate about other victims of Jody Hildebrandt and what they did with that information as people came forward.
While the kids were in the hospital and we're waiting to do interviews, we're waiting until they're healthy to do interviews, the calls were flooding in of, I was a victim of Jody, I was a victim of Jody, so I was just following up with all of these potential character witnesses, and you know, there were a few that you kind of sift through and it's not pertaining to the case or doesn't seem pertinent at all, but then there were a few that I'm like, wow, like a lot of what you're saying coincides with our victims now. And so those were the victims that I really followed up with and got a good story from them, and just understanding what they went through. I would say just mitigating and seeing like what information you need. As far as a lot of those victims, they're beyond the statute of limitations, or they're not in my area. I can't do anything with that except tell them to report to their local agency.
How many do you think you actually had conversations with or had to take down information from as a credible character witness or victim that matched up with some of the same behaviors?
Yeah, I'd say I spoke with about 4 that I saw consistencies to our story.
So there's still much more to bring you on this case, as you may imagine. And if you'd like to find more of our coverage, you can do so on our YouTube channel. But stick with us here at 2 News, both on air and online, because we still don't know how long Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrandt will spend behind bars. That is something we are waiting on from the Board of Pardons and Parole. We'll be here to bring that to you. Let's talk about what's going on, because regardless of where you are, I think in many parts of the state you've got some activity going on. I was just taking a look at some of the afternoon and early evening videos that we were seeing from a UDOT camera in Tooele.
Right, yeah.
Man, things moved in really quick and they're not going away.
Right, well, yeah, we had a cold front push through the area, and that heavy rain transitioned over to snow. The ski resorts, they were loving the snow today. 3 to 6, even 7 inches of snow up into the mountains, and it's still snowing up there. We've got the light snow along I-80, reduced visibility, slushy conditions, wet roadways, so please be careful. Give yourself some extra time. You can see where the front is currently draped through the state, just south of the Wasatch Front, as we continue to see these temperatures here, 10 to 13 degrees cooler from yesterday, so it is jacket weather out there, no doubt. And then where the cold front hasn't pushed through, the warmer air down towards the south and east, 10 to 11 degrees warmer from yesterday. Currently sitting at 72 degrees in St. George. It's hard to believe that along the Wasatch Front we're into the 30s and 40s. 40 here in Salt Lake. Heber sitting at 39 degrees. We've got some isolated rain and snow showers down towards the south from the Fillmore area. We even had a few thunderstorms earlier with some lightning strikes that continues to weaken and push out towards the east. But some good steady rain here along the I-15 corridor now from Provo into the Draper area. We had a few snowflakes mix in at times in the Salt Lake area. Now we're back to plain old rain as the precipitation gets a little bit lighter. Farmington area and then back up towards northward, seeing some of that dry air work its way into Ogden, Brigham City. This dry air is moving down towards the south and east, and eventually by the 7, 8 o'clock hour will all be dry. And then the central part of the state will be dealing with some of that scattered snow and rain activity through about 10 o'clock tonight. 11 o'clock through early tomorrow morning. It's down into the central part of the state once again. It's the Richfield area, seeing some of that snow, some of that rain north of the Moab area. But we're dry along the Wasatch Front as we head into tomorrow morning. And the majority of the day tomorrow, we are dry. So if you are heading up to the ski resorts, it's looking pretty good. But by 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, we start to see another round push through about midnight tomorrow. This will be along that same front, but as a warm front pushing through northward here. And then that rain and mountain snow continues on through Saturday morning with more scattered activity as we head into Sunday. So pretty active stretch here of weather that will continue on with some of those rainfall totals up and down the I-15 corridor near about a ½ an inch all the way up to 1.5 inches that we are expecting here for much of the area. So plenty of rain heading our way, but plenty of mountains and snow as well. We already saw upwards of 7 inches today. Could see another foot on top of that as we head through the weekend. Easter Sunday, though, we are looking at some pretty gloomy weather here with temperatures into the 40s and 50s with periods of showers and a few snowflakes mixing in as well. The St. George area, not too pretty here with breezy to windy conditions over the course of the next few days. Tuesday and Wednesday, though, we start to dry things out. We warm things up, and the sun is out as well. Tuesday and Wednesday here, even along the Wasatch Front, looking really nice with temperatures into the 60s. You'll see heading into the weekend will be a little bit rainy, but it's that Tuesday and Wednesday where we can finally get the golf clubs out. Looking really good.
You know,
Wednesday,
it's hard
65.
to even imagine that, given the look at what we've seen from some of those cameras
Yeah.
on the roads right now, also up at our ski resorts. I mean, given the elevation, you'd have to expect that that'll likely happen this time of year. It is still March, right?
That's right.
So we've got some time here. I know a lot of people this time of year,
right on cue, though, for April.
They want to be like you, though, and they want to transition. But I know that, I say that, and I know
a nice
that
balance. I'm going to the mountains tomorrow.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're balanced.
Doing some skiing this weekend, but then I'm already planning Wednesday, You down? Some golf? What do you think?
Wednesday work on
morning.
this ugly swing, man.
Wednesday
Let's do it.
morning.
Man.
How's your
It's
short
even
game?
harder to do it in the suit.
Yeah.
We should try that. That'd be a great video. Thank you, Sean. Remember to download our 2 News weather app, of course, because it is very handy. It keeps you in the know about what's happening as we move throughout a kind of a wacky 7 days here, +2 on those forecasts. So check it out on the 2 News weather app. The app is free to download, and it's good to have in your pocket when Sean Kelly's not there. But you mentioned the slopes tomorrow. Don't have to give away where you're going, but where you're going, what sort of freshies are you expecting?
Well, I mean, they've already picked up 6 to 7 inches in many of the ski resorts. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be dry for
But what are
much
they
of the
getting
day.
for the rest of the night, too? I mean, at least a couple more, maybe?
A couple more inches,
Okay.
but generally the heaviest stuff is pushing down towards the south. So tomorrow morning, I think the commute won't be too bad in the canyons, but, you know, prepare for some showers as we get towards tomorrow
So we
night.
think, because I think everyone has the same idea.
I know, right? It's going to be crowded. It's going to be crowded. I didn't say it won't be crowded, but weather related.
Pack a little bit of patience there with your
Yeah.
snacks and your extra gear in the car. Yeah.
That's right.
Thanks for watching 2 News Live. Thanks for enjoying that in-depth coverage. I know a lot of you have seen it on the social media platforms from last night as well, as we went another deep dive into this case. So have a great night. We are back tomorrow, and we will do it all again. See you.